Well, Shabbat Shalom, everybody. It's so good to see you all. I love to look out there and see your beautiful faces. We are truly excited that you've joined us here at Alpha and Omega Ministries. If you're out there on social media, thank you for joining us. We truly appreciate you. We pray that you will subscribe and share this message. I want to tell you a little secret. The Lord has been here among us in this congregation at Alpha and Omega Ministries, and He has been answering prayers miraculously, which I'm not going to go into today because we don't have time, but I am going to write about it, so check out our website because I'm going to put the details of the prayers that He has miraculously answered. And you need to know He is alive, He is well, He hears us, and He answers. So it's incredible. So without any delay, I want to jump right into the Torah portion because the message today is huge. And it's as though the Lord is weaving a tapestry together for us today. And as you know, if you go to the back side of a tapestry, there are lots of threads that have to come together before you see the total picture. But while you're pulling all the threads in, it can look a little bit complicated. That's our Torah portion today. So with that in mind, I want to tell you the things that we're going to be looking at. We're going to look at the month of Elul, and you're going to see that this is just hugely important. And then we're going to look at the feasts. Not in depth, but just overall, and get a picture of the feast and of the judges that sit at the gates when people come into Jerusalem to go to the feast. And this, of course, this Torah portion is called Shoftim, which is judges. So this all is going to tie together. Then we're going to look at how these are woven together. How are we seeing these things that we're going to talk about today actually manifest in our world? And I think it's going to be incredibly eye-opening, but we're going to see the pattern that He has set up for us to be aware of prior to His coming and the steps that we're going to go through as His people. And so it's not that He wants us to be unaware. Opposite is true. He wants us to know what's going to happen so that we're not surprised, so that we can prepare, and so that we can bring others into the kingdom. So we're going to see an unfolding process of His coming in this Torah portion. And we're going to see that He has given us this month of Elul, and every single Torah portion in this month is one step closer to His coming, and He encapsulates the whole event for us, but He breaks it down into Torah portions. It's amazing. So it's important to know that the Torah is connected and it has a heartbeat. Every heartbeat we have connects to the last one and the next one, right? That's the Torah. It all connects. And last week we had Torah portion Re'eh, which is vision. And we remember that we have to have joy in the vision. That's what God wants for us. And so Re'eh ended with these two verses, Deuteronomy 16 and 17, and they say, 3 times a year all your males shall appear before the Lord your God in the place which He chooses, at the feast of unleavened bread, at the feast of weeks, and at the feast of tabernacles. So 3 biggies that we have to be there for, right? The men. And they shall not appear before the Lord empty-handed. Every man shall give as he is able, according to the blessing of the Lord your God, which He has given you. That was the end of Re'eh, and that was the vision that the Lord wanted to leave us with, and that's the vision of the feasts that are coming. Why? because in those feasts are the greatest blessings he will ever bring to us. Every single feast is about Yeshua, the Messiah, right? Okay. Deuteronomy 16:18 is what our Torah portion Shoftim opens with today. Now see if you see a connection. I doubt it at this point, but listen. 16:18, you shall appoint judges and officers in all your gates, which the Lord your God gives you, according to your tribes, and they shall judge the people with just judgment. So, when we see these portions as connected and not standing alone, we see that the people come to celebrate the feast, but they have to go through the gates of Jerusalem to get in. And what's at those gates? Judges. Ooh, why are those judges there? Don't you just come and go into Jerusalem freely? No, you do not. So we're going to look and we're going to come back to this thought, but I want to plant this seed in your mind right now. Now we're going to pull more threads, okay? So with this in mind, let's go to the calendar. Everybody knows God has a religious calendar, and he's put specific dates on that calendar where he wants people to come and meet with him. And these are called the feasts of the Lord. Leviticus 23:2 says, and the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, speak to the children of Israel and say to them, the feasts of the Lord, which you shall proclaim to be holy convocations, these are my feasts. So does he want us to proclaim them and bring others with us? Yes. And we're going to see that as we bring others with us, this is the whole purpose, right? Bring others with you. Proclaim them. Why? Because when the king returns, and we'll revisit this thought, we're going to bring him tribute. Well, what tribute can you possibly bring to the one who owns everything? People. That's the only thing you can bring him. And that's what he wants. He wants to see his kingdom filled with people. So the people that we bring are the tributes. So the first feast of the year, and everyone went to Jerusalem for this feast, was of course Passover, Exodus 12:1-3. And Adonai spoke to Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, this month will mark the beginning of months for you. It is to be the first month of the year for you. Tell all the congregation of Israel that on the 10th day of this month, each man is to take a lamb for his family, one lamb for his household. And you know that this is Nisan, and Nisan is a month of miracles. The word miracle, nes, is right in the word Nisan. And so this month of miracles is all about Passover, of course. And do you know what Passover is? It's the victory of God over the powers of darkness. All right? And it's for the sake of his people. Remember, Moses cried out, let my people go. And the people of God were crying out because they wanted deliverance. So it's the political system that had begun. Remember when they came into Egypt, the 12 tribes with their families? The political system was safe at that point for them, right? They came in and the Lord was providing for them in that political system. They had a place of safety. They had food. They had a place to raise their families and their herds. And then something happened. The political system that had protected them suddenly enslaved them. Leaders changed, and they were not safe anymore. Now the system that had helped sustain them had enslaved them, and they were crying out for deliverance, and he sent deliverance. Just being alive today, you know that something has happened on the earth. Things have changed, and they've changed quickly. We're going to look at that more in a minute. We get comfortable with our political systems, don't we? they've worked for us for decades upon decades, right? And they've protected us. And yes, even in our lifetimes, we've lived through upheavals and we've recovered and we've moved on. And we continued to hold on to our familiar political systems, so much so that we can become dependent on that political system for protection more than we depend on God for our protection. Can't we? It's amazing how that happens. It's a kind of a frog in the water thing. But suddenly they aren't protecting us. Suddenly leadership has changed. Suddenly things aren't for our benefit in that political system anymore. And we are going to be forced to remember that we aren't citizens of this world. We are citizens of the kingdom of heaven, and from heaven alone will come our protection. It's a shift, isn't it? We're making that shift right now, I think. So during times of upheaval, God is giving us a wake-up call. We're citizens of heaven. And that is where our focus, that re'eh that we talked about last week, that's where our vision has to be. So in celebrating Passover, we're celebrating the physical deliverance of the people of God from the political powers of Egypt. God has amazing ways of doing this, and I love this. There's a sage by the name of Maharal. He lived in Prague. And the Lord gave him an astonishing insight into Moses' life. And it shows us how God works in ways that we don't even detect. Listen to what the Maharal says about what the prophet Ezekiel said. And we'll have a new understanding. Ezekiel 28:18. By the multitude of your iniquities in the unrighteousness of your trade, you profaned your sanctuaries. So I brought fire out from your midst. What was the midst here? It was the sanctuaries. They turned rotten. So God brought fire out of their midst. It consumed you. So what does this mean? Let's look at Moses. Pharaoh's daughter, of course, we all know, brought Moses back in to raise him as her very own son in the house of Pharaoh, right? How wonderful for Moses. From a watery grave, he was rescued and brought into this amazing place. But then, of course, we know that Moses ended up leaving the palace. He went out. He ended up as a shepherd for years in the desert, but he came back. And when he came back into the house of Pharaoh, the very house he'd been raised in, what did he do? He brought the fire that destroyed Pharaoh and the political system. The entire thing came down. The fire came right out of the house that Moses had been raised in. Moses became that fire. Now that's an amazing picture. Can you picture it? You're all so quiet. Do you see it? When Moses came back into Pharaoh's house where he'd been raised, he became the one that brought Pharaoh down. Fire came out from the very place he'd been raised in. That's a huge thing. Yeshua has worked in the world's political systems all these years. He's coming out as the God of fire, and he's going to bring every political system in this world down. Out of the midst of calamity, the Lord is bringing his kingdom. Deuteronomy 7:21. You shall not dread them, for the Lord your God is in your midst, a great and awesome God. So who is this God in our midst? It's the fire of God coming to destroy evil, and he's the one in our midst. This is not on your notes, Deuteronomy 4:23. For the Lord your God is a consuming fire, a jealous God. And Deuteronomy 23:14 is on your notes, says, since the Lord your God walks in the midst of your camp to rescue you and to defeat your enemies before you, therefore your camp must be holy. That's a big deal. And John 14:20 and 21, these verses just took me and captured me. How much is he in our midst? Do we really understand? Listen to these words in John 14:20 and 21. It says, at that day, whenever it says that day, it means the very end of time. That's what it's referring to. So this is what he wants us to know now, at that day. You will know that I, Yeshua is speaking, am in my Father, and you are in me, and I am in you. Is he in our midst? He's in God. We're in him. He's in us. This is the safest place in the world to be. He who has my commandments and keeps them, it is he who loves me, and he who loves me will be loved by my Father, and I will love him and manifest myself to him. You want to be safe? Be in Yeshua. That is the only safe place. You can move, you can run, you can do anything you want to do, and the Lord's free to let you do that. But the safe place is in him. So, if ever there was a time to be his holy people, to love and obey his commandments, it's now. So we can see the battle sides lining up, can't we? And God is preparing us for the days ahead. This past Thursday, which was August 17th, we turned the calendar to the month of Elul. Who cares, right? Why is that important? Well, there's a rhythm and a purpose to the months on the calendar that the Lord created. And the month of Elul is the 6th month. Okay, it's the month when Passover has been celebrated, Shavuot came and went, that's been celebrated, the first fruits has been celebrated, all the spring feasts are past. Now we're in the 6th month, and as Re'eh, the end of Re'eh told us, we're preparing for the feast. What feast? The fall feast. Why is that important? That's the third feast, the third one they had to go to Jerusalem for, and in that feast is the one where the Lord's returning, right? Sukkot. This is the big one. This is the one we're preparing for now. So, all of these things have happened, but in the month of Elul, we prepare to crown the king. We do that on Rosh Hashanah, but it's just a preparation. The fall feasts come very quick. They're all very close together. There's no big gap of time. So we're preparing for that feast because it leads to tabernacles, okay? So if you're going to go to the coronation of a king, you want to prepare for this event. How do we prepare for it? There's one way. We do teshuvah. We prepare our hearts. It's the thing that we are going to offer to him. So teshuvah is translated from Hebrew as repentance, and it does mean that, but it literally means to return, as if turning back to something you've strayed away from or looked away from. You know, something else has caught your eye. Oh, other things have been occupying your mind, your time, everything. So we turn back to the Lord in whatever ways that we may have strayed or whatever the case may be. We seek forgiveness for not making him first in everything. We turn and we go the opposite way of whatever the sins were that we're coming to him for. Matthew 5:8 says, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God." This is the month when it is said that the king is in the field. All right. So that means that this is a picture of the king who has stepped away from his throne and comes to be right where his people are, a place where he is easily accessible. Isaiah 55:6 says, "Seek you the Lord while he may be found. Call on him while he is near." Elul is a month about love. And the Lord is our beloved. That's the song we sang this morning. In Hebrew, we see some amazing insights from the Song of Songs. We're going to look at chapter 6, verses 2 and 3. "My beloved has gone to his garden." This is the bride speaking. "To the beds of spices to feed his flock in the gardens and to gather lilies." And then all of a sudden, something dawns on her. It's like a light went on. And she said, "Wait a minute, I am my beloved's, and my beloved is mine. He feeds his flock among the lilies." It's like she's going, what am I doing? I'm here in the weeds. He's my shepherd, and he's over there in those gorgeous lilies feeding his flock. And she goes and seeks him out. This is what the month of Elul is about. It's going to him where he is. She's preparing now to meet him. In the Hebrew, the words, "I am my beloved's and my beloved is mine," are these words right here. I hope you can all see them. They're ani, which means I, ledodi, and my beloved's, ve, dodi, and my beloved, li, is mine. That's what ani, ledodi, ve, dodi, li, I am my beloved's and my beloved is mine. Now, here's the incredible thing. Here's how we know this refers to the month of Elul. If you take the first letter of each of these words, there are 4 words, 4 letters, the Aleph, the Lamed, the Vav, and the Lamed become Elul. This is the name of the month that we're in. I am my beloved and my beloved is mine, is Elul. It's a beautiful thing. This is the month that we've just entered, okay? So this is a love story, this whole month between the Lord and his people. This is a time to come face to face with our beloved Messiah. And the word tells us in Psalm 145:18, the Lord is near to all who call on him, to all who call on him in truth. Hebrews 10:22, let us draw near with a true heart in full assurance, with our hearts being sprinkled clean from an evil conscience and our bodies washed with pure water. Deuteronomy 4:7, and what great nation is there that has a God so near to it as the Lord our God is to us whenever we call upon him. So that's what we're doing this month, calling upon our God. So during the month of Elul, we blow the shofar every day, and we read Psalm 27 in the morning and the evening. Psalm 27, as we're going to see, is a love story, and all great love stories have tension, don't they? And they have times of testing, right? Any of you that have ever been or watched a great movie of a great love story, there's always those times. You think, oh, are they going to make it? Are they going to come? It's amazing. But if it's a love story, those times are going to exist. And so David writes Psalm 27 to speak of the true joy and real questions that we have as we walk with the Lord. So here's Psalm 27, verses 1 through 3, and I'm just going to look at the underlined parts. And David says, the Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the strength of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? When the wicked came against me to eat up my flesh, my enemies and my foes, they stumbled and fell. So through these words, we hear David has had experiences with God, right? And he has seen the hand of God working on his behalf because he's proclaiming it right there in those words, right? So he knows that the Lord will rescue him. He's experienced it. He has no fear. His faith is strong. Okay. Verses 4 through 6. One thing I have desired of the Lord that I will seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to behold the beauty of the Lord and to inquire in his temple. So David's heart's desire is just to be with God, this God that he loves so much, to spend as much time with him as he can, to be in the presence of the Lord. So simple, right? But so profound. And then it says, for in the time of trouble, he shall hide me in his pavilion. And we're going to see this loud and clear as we carry on, and we're going to learn about Cheder, the room that we're supposed to go in and close the door. David is being very prophetic here. And he is telling us, listen, when these times come and the enemies surround you, you're going to go into his pavilion and he's going to hide you, right? And then verses 7 through 10. Now listen to this. This is the man that was his faith was huge, right? His love for the Lord, he wanted nothing more than to spend time. 7 through 10. Hear, O Lord, when I cry with my voice. Have mercy also upon me and answer me. Do not hide your face from me. Do not turn your servant away in anger. Do you hear a change here? You have been my help. Do not leave me or forsake me, O my God. When my father and mother forsake me, then the Lord has to take care of me. So suddenly David is in trouble. And he's seeking the God who seems to be hidden now. Where is he? Now, where is the God David trusted? Verses 8 through 14, it says, do not deliver me to the will of my adversaries, for false witnesses have risen against me, and such as breathe out violence. I would have lost heart unless I had believed that I would see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. And then he says, wait on the Lord. Be of good courage, and he will strengthen your heart. Wait on the Lord. So David's enemies are rising again. But he's not seeing the Lord come to rescue him. Maybe in the same way, maybe as quickly, maybe not at all. Sometimes it happens. Sometimes enemies overtake you, and it appears that they have won, doesn't it? But they haven't. They have not. So he hangs on to what he knows. So what do we know about the Lord that we're hanging on to? What did David hang on to the Lord about? He said, I would have lost heart unless I had believed that I would see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. He believes that the good Lord will come and rescue him again in his way and in his time. So he's telling us, don't lose heart. There are times that are tough when we don't get what's going on, but the Lord is still there, and you'll see his goodness. So remember what God said about David in Acts 13:22. After removing Saul, he made David their king. And God, he testified concerning him, I have found David, son of Jesse, a man after my own heart. He will do everything I want him to do. Wow. So there you see God's great love and even trust in David, right? Even though he knows David's going to blow it once in a while. Okay, so we can hear this amazing love relationship that they have going on. But like David, we have to remember his faithfulness in those times of testing, because they come. Deuteronomy 8 verse 2. You shall remember all the way which the Lord your God has led you in the wilderness these 40 years, that he might humble you, testing you to know what was in your heart, whether you would keep his commandments or not. That's a big deal. Job 23:10. He knows the way I take. When he has tested me, I will come forth as gold. So passing the test brings rewards. Even David went through these tests. So what does Elul have to do with our Torah portion? I'm so happy you asked. All right, now we're going to go back and grab that very first thought I mentioned, that all the Torah portions are connected. All right, and Deuteronomy 16:18, the first verse in Shoftim, our Torah portion, says, you shall appoint judges and officers in all your gates when the Lord your God gives you, according to your tribes, and they shall judge the people with just judgment. So what do judges do? Because they were at all the gates. They governed. They judged, but they didn't do it on a whole huge basis. One at a time came through those gates. And they sat there and they judged each one that came through. And why are there officers there if there are judges? Well, the officers had a very important job to do too. They had to keep order. They had to arrange things. Remember, when these feasts came, there were maybe 600,000 people living in Jerusalem at the time when the feasts were going on in Israel. But when the feasts came, 2-3 million people would descend upon Jerusalem. What were they going to do with them? The officers had to arrange things. They had to say, okay, you guys, everybody that lived there opened their homes to all the people that were coming. And so you might have 2, 3, 5 families in your house, depending how big your house was. So the officers would help get these things arranged. And the judges would judge if you were to be coming in. So it was an organized event. All these events were very organized. There's always order in God's kingdom. Just look at space, right? Okay, so the judges and the officers had a big job. So the very first Torah portion in the month of Elul is Shoftim, meaning judges. And we will see that in the month of Elul, judgment has begun on the earth. And then each consecutive Torah portion is going to lead us to another step of judgment until his return, all in the Torah portions in this month. So in our minds then is the thought that the feasts are coming that meant you were going to be going to Jerusalem and you have to get ready for this time. Right? You're preparing your heart because you're going to go through the judges and they're going to ask you questions. So the people prepared for Passover, right? They prepared themselves for Shavuot. When the Lord would come on that mountain, remember all the things they had to do to get ready? And for tabernacles, we have to build sukkahs. We prepare for these things. So there's preparation before all of these feasts. Okay. All these people were coming to Jerusalem for the feast. And the judges had to decide who was going to come in and who was not going to come in. This is all a picture of what's going to happen in the book of Revelation. The whole month of Shoftim is absolutely about the book of Revelation. So 1 Corinthians, all this judging going on, is it for us? Let's look. 1 Corinthians 5, 12 and 13. For what have I to do with judging outsiders? Is it not those inside the church whom you are to judge? God judges those outside. Purge the evil person from among you. Then 1 Corinthians 6, 2 and 3 says, or do you not know that that the saints will judge the world. And if the world is to be judged by you, are you incompetent to try trivial cases? Do you not know that we are to judge angels? How much more then matters pertaining to this life? Did you know that we are going to judge and that we are to be doing that to keep purity in the body? God requires that. Last week, the Torah portion ended with the feasts, and the feasts culminate with tabernacles. This portion, as I've said before, because I really want this in your mind, lays out for us the pattern of how this will happen. So, what are the Torah portions for the month of Elul? Let's look. They are Shoftim, which means judges. And we're going to go through this in more depth. So I'm going to kind of we're just going to go through the big chunks right now. So it's the judgment will have begun. Then we're going to go to Ki Tetzi. That's the next Torah portion in the month of Elul. And this is when you go out. These are the first words in all of these Torah portions. When you go out, this is the time when the man of war, who is the man of war? It's one of the names of the Messiah. But he came as the son of Joseph the first time, right? He came to die the first time. This time he's coming as the son of David. David was a man of war, and he's coming as a man of war. So in Ki Tetzi, he's going out as a man of war and as a god of fire. It's called Ish Milchama in Hebrew. He's the man of war, and he's going out as the man of war. Then we come to Ki Tavo, which means when you come in. So now he's prepared us. We know that judgment has come. We know he's coming to do war. And then we come into the kingdom. And the last thing is we stand as a family, all that we've brought with us, and we stand before him and worship him as King of Kings and Lord of Lords. That's all that's in the month of Elul. It's incredible, okay? So let's get a little more detailed and look at this preparation and how it's unfolding on the earth. In 2001, there's not a person in here over the age of 20 who doesn't remember 9/11. 9/11 happened without any notice, right? And at that point, a verse went out into the whole world, and I bet you all know it. It's Isaiah 9, 10, and 11. The bricks have fallen down, but we will rebuild with hewn stones. The sycamores are cut down, but we will replace them with cedars. So the Lord is crying out to people, right? And he's gotten everybody's attention, right? And he's saying, stop your pride. Stop looking to your political system to rebuild for you, because it's not going to happen anymore. That was just a warning, all right? That went out. But did people come back to the Lord? Did they return? No. The church is filled up for 2 or 3 weeks, and then it dwindled down to worse than it had been prior. People ignored the warning. That, friends, was a 19-year period of grace, all right? Grace, because it wasn't until 2020 that COVID hit, all right? When COVID hit, let me back up once and tell you, yes. Do you know that 9/11 happened in the month of Elul? No. Yes, it did. And do you know that COVID hit in the month of Elul? It did, yes. And it's hard to pinpoint a date, but it all began to be talked about, and there were articles in the Jerusalem Post telling people in Israel that they would not be able to meet for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. and tabernacles like they usually did because of COVID. Those articles were in the paper in the month of Elul. Okay, this is a huge month. We really need to pay attention. So then 19 years after 9/11, COVID hits. So God gave grace for 19 years, waiting for people to return. Now, God punctuated COVID with a verse also. I don't know if as many people heard it as 9/11, because really people weren't paying attention. They were very turned inward at COVID, right? So Isaiah 26, 20 and 21 says, go. The first word in that verse in Hebrew is lek, and there's an urgency to it. It doesn't mean just, go when you feel like it, go when you got time. No, it means get up and go. And it says, go, my people, enter your rooms and shut the doors behind you. Hide yourselves for a little while until his wrath has passed by. And here, listen to this. See, the Lord is coming out of his dwelling to punish the people of the earth for their sins. That's kitetzi. He's coming out as the man of war. And the verse that went out when COVID started was that verse. Why? Because grace had happened for 19 years after 9/11. When COVID hit, the grace was over. Of course, it's never over. We're bringing people in, but I'm talking overall picture, okay? So when you go out is when the man of war now is coming out. He's coming out of his chambers. And what has happened since 9/11? No, let's say, what has happened since COVID hit? The world has changed. You can all name the things that have happened, right? Inflation has gone crazy. Violence has skyrocketed. Lawlessness is everywhere. You cannot turn on the television without seeing it. The world has completely turned upside down from rational thinking or from right thinking. We see it, right? This is what it's telling us. So, it means when it says, go into your rooms and close the door. What does that mean? Does that mean we're supposed to be terrified and paralyzed with fear? No, quite the opposite. It means this is how you go in and close your door. You study Torah, you do good deeds so that the Father in heaven is glorified, you reject all forms of evil. And we don't even know at this point what that might mean. But if it's evil, reject it. And you add people to the kingdom. You bring people in because, as I said before, the people are the tribute we're going to bring to the king when he comes. So those are the things we are to be doing when we close the door. It absolutely does not, under any circumstances, mean to be stationary or to be passive. Never. Absolutely not. But it means to live your life as a citizen of the kingdom. Yes, because the man of war has stepped off of his place. That's what it says in Isaiah 26. He's coming out of his dwelling to do this work. So going in our rooms connects us directly to the first feast of Passover, because everything is cyclical, right? Everything at the end is going to tie back to the beginning. So this last feast of Shavuot, when we're going in and closing the doors, right, in not a literal sense, But what did they do at the first Passover? Exodus 12:23. When the Lord goes through the land to strike down the Egyptians, he will see the blood on top and the sides of the doorframe and will pass over that doorway. And he will not permit the destroyer to enter your houses and strike you down. So of course, this is a picture for us of the door that we go through, and the door is Yeshua. Remember what we read in John 14. I'm in my Father, you are in me, I am in you. He's the door. John 10:9 says, I am the door. By me, if any man enter in, he shall be saved. That's how we're saved. Yeshua's always our protection. He's the door we go through, just as they did at the first Passover when they went through the doorpost with the blood of the lamb. The symbolism was all there. He's our door. So there is a word in Hebrew. I know this is complicated, but I hope you're staying with me. The word in Hebrew for room is cheder. And it's actually an acrostic, and it also lays out the pattern for us of what will happen in these times when judgment, how does judgment begin? All right, so cheder, the het, stands for chesed, or grace. Grace was the 19-year period, if you want to put this in recent historical terms. Grace was that 19-year period between 9/11 and COVID. All right, so we've seen the grace. Then we enter the stage of dalet, or din, which is judgment. All right, we're in that stage now. That is not to say we're in the tribulation. No, we're not. But we've entered judgment. The man of war has stepped out. All right. The last stage is the Reish, or Rakamim, which means mercies. And that is these two stages when we come into the land. When he returns, he's taking us to Jerusalem, right? And we'll stand and worship him. So going into the cheder, which is the Hebrew word for room, we see the grace, we see the judgment, and we see the mercies that are coming. All right, if you wanted to relate this to Revelation, you could say this is chapters 1 through 3. This is all the war and the horrible things that are going to happen on the earth. We haven't really entered, but times of judgment we've entered. And these are the last 2 chapters when he describes his return and the amazing things that are going to happen. So that is the word for judgment, or for room. And so we've entered the stage of judgment, Shoftim. In the book of Revelation, we see this. It's an incredible thing. Shoftim means judgment. So what has God judged so far? What's he judging in Revelation chapters 1 through 3? He's judging the churches, right? He hasn't come yet. The tribulation has not begun yet, but his judgment has begun. And what is he doing? Out of those 7 churches, 2 of them, he's saying, you guys are good, keep on the road you're on, no problem. The other 5, they have problems. And he's confronting them with those problems. He's judging them. And he's telling them, listen, you guys, straighten this out. Or, right? Or your lampstand is going to be removed. You know, there's a consequence, right? So that's what's happening in Revelation 1 through 3. During this time of judgment, the judgment has begun. We're being warned. And so here we are in this month of Elul, where the king is in the field, and we can go to him, and whatever it is that we need to get straightened out, we can. Isn't it beautiful? All right, so that is Shoftim. Deuteronomy, let's see, 20, 9 through 11 says, when the officers have finished addressing the army, these are the officers, remember, they're the guys that have to organize everything and make sure everything is going to go smoothly. They are to appoint commanders to lead it. When you approach a city to fight against it, you are to make an offer of peace. If they accept your offer of peace and open their gates, all the people will serve you. This is amazing. So this is one of the Torah portions. This is kitetzi, when you go out. So Deuteronomy 29 and 11, this is the rules of war. When they went into a city to annihilate it, first they offered peace. And that's what the Lord is doing right now, right? He's come out. Judgment has begun. And he's offering peace. If we accept his peace, how does he know? He knows because we're going to serve him. We're going to serve him. That's what it says if you keep reading. Well, it says, and all the people there will serve you. That's what it says. So this is an amazing time. So this is going on in these first 3 chapters of what? Of Elul, and in the first 3 chapters of Revelation. So all these things are happening. You see them all tying together. Do you see it? All right. I don't see any lights flashing out there. Are you there? All right. Okay. So Yeshua is telling us what to do to have peace with him. He wants us to serve him. It's a pretty simple thing, right? And at the same time, the judges are at the gates. What does Jude 1, 14 and 15 say? It was also about these that Enoch, the 7th from Adam, prophesied, saying, behold, the Lord comes with 10,000s of his holy ones to execute judgment on everyone and to convict all of the ungodly of every ungodly act of wickedness and every harsh word spoken against him by ungodly sinners. So we're going to be judging with him. Isn't that an amazing thought? The holy ones are coming with him to execute judgment. The next Torah portion in Elul is kitetzi, which I've referred to several times, when you go out, and that is specifically speaking of the man of war going out, all right? He's already out here. Deuteronomy 21:10. When you go to war against your enemies and the Lord your God delivers them into your hand and you take them captive. So we're going to enter this war with the Lord. And even our enemies are going to be delivered into our hands. Remember Psalm 27? Remember when we read that just a few minutes ago? And David began that psalm by praising God for delivering his enemies, right? They fell before him. Yes, we're going to see that happen. Will we see it every single time? Well, follow Psalm 27. He's going to tell, there'll be testing. There will be testing. But we can depend on him because we're going to see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. So then we come to the third portion in the month of Elul, and it's called Ki Tavo, when you come in. So we've entered judgment. We've gone through the door, who is Yeshua. The Lord has told us how to have peace, how to serve him in peace, even though the war has begun. And we enter into the time we meet with him when you come in. Oh my gosh, Deuteronomy 26, 9 and 11 says, he has brought us to this place and has given us this land, a land flowing with milk and honey. And now, behold, I have brought the first fruits of the land, which you, O Lord, have given me. Then you shall set it before the Lord your God and worship before the Lord. We don't think of Deuteronomy as prophetic, do we? But it's 100% prophetic. This isn't a historical book. Yes. Did it happen once? Is everything cyclical? Yes. We're about to see the culmination of this whole cyclical process. And finally, the last portion in Elul is Nitzavim, which means to stand. And Deuteronomy 29, 9 through 13, the very last portion in the month of Elul, says, all of you stand today before the Lord your God, your leaders and your tribes and your elders and your officers, all the men of Israel, your little ones and your wives, also the stranger who is in your camp, from the one who cuts your wood to the one who draws your water, that you may enter into the covenant with the Lord your God and into his oath which the Lord your God makes with you today, that he may establish you today as a people for himself, and that he may be God to you, just as he has spoken to you, and just as he has sworn to your fathers, to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Do you see all the things he's bringing to a beautiful bow up here on top? He's bringing it all back together. He's taking us back to our roots, because we see that we're going back, as Abraham and Sarah did. We're bringing people into the kingdom, right? The tent doors of their tents were always open so that the people could come in and learn. That was their tribute to him. So it says, just as he swore to the fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, we're going to see the fulfillment of what he swore in Torah portion, Nitzavim. He's giving us the land as promised to Abraham, and he will establish us as his people. Alas, the cycle will be complete. What more wonderful promises could we even imagine? Can you imagine? I mean, woo! And now look how the book of Revelation ends, with guards at the gates of the new Jerusalem. Revelation 21, 22 and on. But I saw no temple in it, for the Lord God Almighty and the Lamb are its temple, and the nations of those who are saved shall walk in its light, and the kings of the earth bring their glory and honor into it. Its gates shall not be shut at all by day. There shall be no night there, but there shall by no means enter anything that defiles or causes an abomination or a lie, but only those who are written in the Lamb's book of life. That's what the final judgment will be. So we've entered this month of Elul, a hugely significant month. And if we don't have questions to talk about after this, I don't know what will make them. But let's prepare to meet the King, because he is coming. So hallelujah. And yes, we began with the song Ani Ladodi Vidodi Li. And we don't usually do this, but I think we should sing it again, because it's just so hugely appropriate. And now you have so much meaning to attach to it that I hope you'll enjoy singing it again.